Good morning and happy Tuesday. I know I'm late. I wanted to wait till I got to the office and got myself settled because today we're talking about language. We've been talking about the things that decide how we feel. That, first of all, we are in control. We're the ones that decide about how we feel at any given moment. It doesn't matter what happens to us, it matters what we choose to respond to that particular event. However, most of the time we don't choose. Most of the time we live in a reactionary situation where we let our conditioning choose for us. And so we've been learning that there's three things that decide how we respond at any given time. That's the triad. It's our physiology, it's our focus, and then our language slash belief. So today we're going to talk about language slash belief. And since I'm a lawyer, I thought coming to the law office would make sense to talk about language, since that's what lawyers are all about. So the way that we define things decides how we feel about that particular thing. So let's say that you took an event, and if somebody asked you about it, you said that the event was inconvenient, or you said that the event was devastating. Which one impacts you more? Well, devastating, of course. Now, did the event change? No, not at all. And the reason that I use the term inconvenient is because the guy that wrote Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, he was on a safari and their truck had broken down and the sun was setting and the animals were all starting to come in. They were starting to circle the truck, and if they didn't get it going and get out of there, they were going to be in serious trouble. Stephen Covey is his name. Stephen Covey is the guy that wrote Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read it, you should read it. So he was like not paying attention. He was working on something and he was not paying attention. And the vehicle started to panic. Everybody started to panic. And he finally like raised his head and looked around and saw what was going on. And he goes, "Oh, this is inconvenient." And everybody kind of laughed. And as soon as they laughed and took a breath, one of the guys that was driving the vehicle went, "Oh, I know what I think is going on." And he went out and he fixed the vehicle and they were able to drive in safely. See, when we're stressed, we're not breathing, we're not taking deep breaths, we're not thinking clearly. Stephen, by defining the situation as inconvenient rather than death threatening, created a more relaxed environment from which a solution arrived. That's the key right there. That's the key to everything. If you put yourself in a situation where you feel differently so that you are creating a more thoughtful response to the situation, then you're going to have better choices, which are going to lead to a better life. Better choices lead to a better life, period. If you make better choices, it leads to a better life. The question is, how do I make those choices? Well, one of the greatest ways is to manage your state so that you're in the best state possible when you're making those decisions. Then obviously the more information you can give to yourself and all of those different things. But managing the state is number one. Language slash belief. Now here's the second part about that, belief. Is it is it the response that decides, or excuse me, is it the event that decides how we feel, or our belief about what's going to happen to that event or going to happen from that event? It's our belief about what's going to happen from that event. So I was just talking to a good friend of mine this morning who was at my house doing some stuff. Brian, good morning, Brian. And we were talking about Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison had done 10,000 experiments to discover the incandescent light bulb when Life magazine did an interview of him. And the guy on Life magazine looked at him and said, "How many times are you going to try this and fail before you finally give up?" Edison said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you've done 10,000 experiments and it hasn't worked. When are you going to figure out that the incandescent light bulb cannot be invented?" And Edison looked at him actually confused and said, "What are you talking about? I've discovered 10,000 ways for it not to work. I'm that much closer than everybody else to figuring out how it in fact is going to work." Edison had a belief that in fact he was going to create that outcome no matter what. Because of that belief, we now have lights in this office rather than burning candles or something like that. His belief about that situation changed his approach to that situation. And the language that he used applied to that. I have found all the ways to not invent the light bulb. I'm that much closer to finding the way that it's going to work. So that's why we combine language/belief as one of the three pillars of that triad that decide how you feel, because they're kind of connected. When you decide how to define something, it also decides your belief about that something. And that's what we use the language for. So start paying attention to the language that you use to define certain things. So, ask yourself, what are the words that you use on a regular basis? Do you use words like catastrophic or destroyed, or, do you use words that are very, very destructive to describe daily events for yourself? Or do you use words like fantastic, awesome, fabulous, to quote Samantha from Sex and the City? That was her word. How do you define the good things in your life? Do you even define them? Or do you even allow them to be a good thing? Or when there is a good thing, do you say what's wrong with it? Instead of saying, oh my God, this was a spectacular outcome. How you define those things, the language that you use, is going to decide the feeling that's related to that event. And ultimately, it's going to decide your belief that's related to that event. And your belief about that event is also going to decide the language and how you feel. Start paying attention to those things. And rather than running on automatic pilot in a way that doesn't serve you, start utilizing language and beliefs in a way that serve you. And over time, this is going to make a huge difference. But right away, it can make a gigantic difference in how you feel. If something happens that really is not what you wanted to have happen, how different does it feel if you say, that's inconvenient, or, I'm kind of peeved about that, as opposed to, this is catastrophic, this is cataclysmic, this is disastrous. Okay, start paying attention to that language and how different it is and how different you feel when those things happen. When you say something like, Jim Cramer's favorite, if you ever watch CNBC, suboptimal, when one CEO had a situation in his company that was very bad, he said, this is suboptimal, okay. But what that type of language allows you to do is, okay, if this is suboptimal, then how can we get to optimal? As opposed to, this is cataclysmic. Cataclysmic, there's no coming out of that. Disastrous, there's no way really coming out of that too. But when you say this isn't the result that we were shooting for, now that creates space where you can go, okay, well, what's the result that we were shooting for and how can I get there? So start paying attention to the language that you use and the beliefs about the outcomes that you can create, and you're going to start feeling differently about how all this stuff works. We'll talk tomorrow about how to condition this in so that it becomes habitual and you don't have to think about it. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Buddy, you're my one person watching this morning because I'm late. Thank you so much for watching. Great to see you. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other.